Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
CNC Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, CNC provides patient-centered care for your entire family. CNC Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. With the next hour, we cover all the home teams, Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. We'll talk about it all. Senior Bowl as well. Big extravaganza going down in Mobile. And of course, to break down for us, one of our favorite guests. You ask for him every single week. I can't have him every week, but I try to bring him on about every 6 weeks. It's Mike Detillier of WLAE Radio. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Eric.
Happy Mardi Gras to you, my friend. And before we get started, I know that, again, you're riding in Mad Hatters. A lot of folks are wondering what's happening with the parade. Can you give us an update?
Yeah, we just got told it'll be moved to Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock. And so I'm just projecting we're going to follow Atlas in Metairie. And so we've ridden in it since 2018. We had the pandemic year, we didn't ride, but ridden every year there, and man, thoroughly enjoy it. Right. It is a great ride.
It'll be you, Bobby, the whole crew on that one?
Me, Bob, Mike Hoss will ride with us, and so we're going to ride in one float, and then they'll have a WWL radio float a little bit, I think, behind us, so to speak.
What float are you on for folks that want to see you? You know yet?
I have no idea of what exactly float.
But they have it listed on.
We'll be on the Who Dat float.
Okay.
And so we'll be on the Saints float.
Beautiful.
Even Coach Joe said, man, I don't know about riding with y'all. y'all too bad for me.
That'll be old home week with you, Bobby, and Coach Joe together.
It'll be quite a ride.
Yeah, I bet.
Tell you that way.
I bet. Of course, WWL Radio. Also, at this time of year, do you miss the public kid? Do you miss the draft guide? Because everybody asks me all the time, man, Mike's going to do the draft. Mike's done with the draft guide. Okay?
Eric, you're probably the third person today, and we taping this at 1 o'clock,
1 o'clock
that have asked me about that. There is a yes and a no to it. I miss the finished product when it's done? Yeah. And you finished it, and a lot of hours involved, a lot of time involved, and editing, that's a lot of time, and then to hear back from people about, I haven't put it down since I got it, and it makes you feel good about what you've done, all that time and effort and everything. And I've had people tell me, because I did it for 35 years, is that I've got every publication. I'm like, man, that's no way. And they'll send me a picture of all the books, and it's like, whoa, that is pretty nice. So you miss that part of it, and that everybody was looking forward to getting it. And being in print's a little bit different than seeing it on your computer or cell phone or anything, how you get your information. And, you know, for some people, they want the book.
They want the book, right.
They wanted the book part of it. The no part is the hours put in to doing it. I write like I talk, which is wordy, and so you got to go back and edit it down and try to get it to fit. And so instead of being 800 pages, it would be 200 pages. And then toward the end, we had difficulties in the mailing process, not the post office itself, but it would get to a center, and then, you know, we had 300, 400, 500 books sitting, waiting to get mailed off, you know, for over a week. And it's like, you know, what's happened? I never had those issues before, but the last 2 years, we had some major issues involved with that. And maybe that was God telling me, Mike, it's time, cash it in. And so stop doing it, and you never say never, but it would be a real long thing before I ever did it again.
Well, you and I have talked about in the past the hours that you put in year round on that.
And I still do a lot of it. I still do a lot of it. So it's, you know, because I go back and sort of, I always think my first impression of a player is the best. Don't go back and redo it. I know Mel Kiper pretty well. And one of the things Mel does, he'll put out a projection, and 2 weeks later it's changed, and then another month it's changed, another month. And he's trying to be right at the end product, okay, of when draft day hits. And that's just the way he looks at things. And I get it. You know, he wants to be right on draft day. For me, it's more important 3 years from now, were you right with your projections?
That's right. And I was one of those guys that kept all those books until Katrina took them away, right? And I would go back. Okay, so I would see a player. I said, "Well, where did Mike have him graded?" And I'd go back and look, and I'd read about him. And one of the good things about your book was you'd take us all the way back to high school in a lot of cases.
Yeah, one of the things, and I might do this one day. I've been approached about it. A book about athletics and genetics and how that was a tie-in. And so much of it is you go back and look with players of family history. The dad played here, or the mom was really athletic, was maybe a golfer, volleyball player, whatever, a women's basketball player. And it's funny how that there is a certain genetic code, and yet with some players, mom and dad had no interest in sports. So it's sort of funny in that particular deal. But I always put that in there. People would ask me about it, and also about the high school career, because I do think the one thing that stays true today, scouting has changed. You're looking for a little bit different body type, what they can do a little bit differently than, say, 35 years ago. One thing stays the same. Very few guys that have played in the NFL that weren't productive in high school and college were productive in the NFL. You can be on the all-potential team, which means you ain't done it. You haven't done it. And you can get caught up with this, and this, I'll never forget it, Jim Finks. This had to be 1988. We're doing a show, and he was like, I'm going to tell you something. He said, you got a good eye, real good eye for talent, but he says, always remember this. Don't fall in love with the athlete. Fall in love with the football player. And, you know,
some GMs do that.
Always think about that. And some people, they have this little box code of he's got to be this size and can run this way and have this type of length. And you can't build a team on exceptions to the rule, but there always are. There always are those type of people, and we see the body types change. I've talked about it for the last couple of years because I see it from the high school ranks. The defensive linemen today, defensive ends especially, are smaller than they were 35 years
Jeff
ago.
Allen talked about it the other day, right?
And I heard Jeff say the exact same thing, that you're getting a little smaller guy. He might not be 6'5", 280.
The prototype that they like.
Yeah. You might catch one who's 6'2" or 6'1.5". Doesn't mean he can't play. It's just that's what the colleges are giving you. So you can't be hard-headed and say, I'll only pick that guy. I don't care how good he is. I'll only pick him, because you know what? the body types change, but you didn't.
Right.
You've got to change to the guy.
to.
Years ago, a mobile quarterback.
Right.
Okay? Man, scratch him off the list. He can't play in the NFL.
He's got to be a pro-style guy.
Okay? Put him to wide receiver or maybe safety.
Right.
Today, no, I want my quarterback to move. Now, Bradshaw told me the best line about running quarterbacks. He's like, I was a running quarterback when I came out of Louisiana Tech. I really was. But he said, I got hit a few times. I became a pocket passer real quick. But he said, I was able to translate some movement skills, even as good as we were in Pittsburgh. So I was able to translate that. But he said, for us taking off running with it, man, them guys back then, he says, not like they are today. They're going for you. And that's something Jaden Daniels is going to have to learn.
I agree with that.
Well, I think he's the second best prospect in this draft class behind Caleb Williams.
Okay.
And I think it's obvious who the first 4 picks are going to be. It's going to be Caleb, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., the wideout. So I think those 4, now kind of how they fall depends, but I wouldn't be surprised quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. And I told you that the last time here in December. And I still really believe that. But Jaden's got to learn one thing. In the NFL, if you take off running, man, those guys are out to get you. And now they can't protect you. Okay? If you're a runner and you break that pocket, now you like a guy with the football in your hands, they really can't protect you unless you slide. So we had Pete Jenkins on the other day, and Pete would always tell me, Mike, I'd never seen a guy run like that. Never seen a guy.
Oh, his second gear is incredible.
And he was like, you're standing on the sidelines and you watch him, and you say, he's not really moving that fast, until he said, you almost hear him, like wind. He said, just pass you. And he said, they got guys with angles, and all of a sudden, there is no angle. He outruns the angle. So, and I think the world of Jaden. I think, he's mentally and physically tough. He had been through some difficult times, but he's been able to get through it. He's become a much better passer, great team player. He's got everything that you could check off. And I think he's got still upside to his game, because that too you have to worry about. Has a player maxed out in college? With Jaden, he's still got upside to him, and fit too. I think in every draft class, and I tell you this every year, there are probably 5 or 6 guys. No matter where they go, production's the same. 5 or 6. Everybody else is about fit. How well they fit into what you do offensively or defensively, the scheme, everything else. And that's why we see bounce around quarterbacks. Who would have guessed before the year Baker Mayfield would have played like he did in Tampa?
Not me.
Nobody would have guessed that. No one. And yet he was able to do it. And so it was the right place, right fit, right coach. And that coach turned that into being the head coach with the Carolina Panthers.
Well, I want to talk about the Senior Bowl in a moment, but what are your thoughts about Michael Pratt and his, how you think he may assimilate into the NFL?
I think he'll do very well. He's got some movement skills. Now, he can't run like Jaden, but nobody can.
Sure.
But he can move around the pocket. He's got a real whip for an arm. He comes out of that quick, tight delivery, over the top. I think he's gotten much better with his reads and recognition of coverage downfield. That's where he's made the biggest improvement for me. I think he goes anywhere from 55 to 75.
Okay. Is he a future starter or is he a backup?
I think he's a future starter somewhere in the NFL. So I would say late second, third round for Pratt, depending on sort of runs. This draft is heavy at wide out and heavy with offensive linemen, especially at the tackle position. Eric, I think it may break the record for the most tackles picked in round 1. You may have, because I only have 22 guys with first round pick grades. But from 23 to like 46, in the first 22, I think I have 6 offensive tackles. From 22 to 40, I think I have 4 other guys. I think the record's 8.
It's going to be a run.
And so you know, you always looking for that guy that can protect the edge.
Right.
If it's at left tackle or right tackle. And I think there'll be a run on quarterbacks too. I think early. Top 4 picks, 3 to 4, or 1, 2, 3 will be quarterbacks. The intrigue is going to be where Michael Penix Jr. goes.
Okay.
Where J.J. McCarthy goes. Bo Nix from Oregon. Where those 3 guys end up. There are so many varying opinions on all 3.
Are they future starters?
Oh, yeah, I think all 3 will get an opportunity to start in the NFL. It's just like I think Pratt will eventually get that opportunity to start in the NFL. But I think the one thing with Mike is his improvement in kind of seeing what's happening coverage-wise, pressure-wise, and getting the ball out quicker. To him. And he was hurt last year. That's the other issue. Sometimes you don't know about every issue some player has.
Sure.
And we saw last year, you know, he missed time early, but you could see he was sort of banged up throughout the year. And then his receivers started getting banged up, which also played a part in it. But one thing with Brazel, he sort of bailed you out.
Yeah. Jaquan Jackson, who's doing really well at the Senior Bowl. What do you think about him?
I saw him at Hornville High School. Man, he can run like hell.
Yeah.
Man, can he run? He's got to become a better route runner.
Okay.
Everybody asks about comparisons. I said this on a show last week. I think a couple people have used it. He looks to me to be almost like a middle-range version of Tank Dell.
Okay.
Who played at Houston and got picked by the Texans.
Right.
They have similar skill sets, and their speed is their game. Their ability to get off the line can get a little bit better. Now, he's got to get a little stronger and become a little bit sharper route runner. But, man, Daquan can run, flat-out run. And that's what Tank Dell could do. Tank could really take off downfield. So I look at him probably late 3rd, but I think he's more of a early 3rd-day pick for somebody.
How big in today's game are the games like the Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine game? How big are those for those potential draftees?
Well, it's your first job interview for the pros.
That's right. Especially the Senior Bowl, right?
Yeah, because a lot of times, most of the time, these general managers and head coaches, okay, they're not sitting there on a Saturday afternoon with the remote watching a game. They might catch a bit and a piece of the game, but they're more concerned about what they're up to, pro-wise. You get an opportunity to sit with these young guys, talk to them, kind of get a little bit of their makeup. And now what's happened, you got a ton of college coaches now that have hit the scene at the Senior Bowl for various reasons. I think for some, especially as an assistant, you might be looking to get to the pros. For some head coaches, it's a little bit of a connection that you still want with your player, but it looks good that you supporting your guy, you know. And for an LSU coach, if it's Brian Kelly or Summerall, I mean, you're right down the road.
Right.
And
we saw Willie Fritz there this week.
Exactly. Right. And so you make that trip there to see it. I think it does help, but really what helps is the practice sessions, not so much the game, but those interviews. They want to hear it. I want to hear it.
Right.
When I sat at Manning with Michael Penix Jr., it took me about 20 seconds. That guy's competitive. And just by the way he would talk to you, his mannerisms, how he described how much he loved football, and then he told you his story. Double knee operations. He grew up in Tampa, Florida, goes to Indiana, then ends up at Washington. And the first time when we meet, I mean, he's sitting down and he sticks his hand out. He got a pair of mitts on him because he put his hand out, man. I was like, whoa, you could tell. And he tells me the story about I'd never thrown a wet, he called it a cold wet ball. He said, I'd never threw it. He said, I threw a hot wet ball when I was in high school when it would rain. But he said, you know, I didn't get a lot of playing time in Indiana. I got hurt. I go to Washington, and I never played in a situation where it's pouring down rain, it's cold, and it's windy. So he said, the first time I go to throw a ball, it basically slips out of my hands. So he said, I had to learn how to re-grip it Well, with them fingers he got, that adjustment wasn't bad to it. And so I was telling him, about, through the process here, everybody's going to bring up about the knees. He was like, there's nothing I can do about it. He said, but my play on the field says it all. And he went through 2 years, no injuries. Went through those 2 years, no injuries with it. But that's going to be the big thing at the combine for Penix, the knees.
Saints needs and what you think they will draft.
Saints needs for me would be in the trenches. I could have said that the last 3 years I was here with you. Offensive line, defensive line.
Tackle, guard?
Well,
I mean, you got Ramczyk on one leg. You don't know what Penning can do.
It would be certainly tackle because I don't know anything about Penning and what he can do.
Right.
And, we get a lot of people say, well, just move him inside. Okay, if he's having technical difficulties with his techniques, if I move him inside, I'm going to have the same issues? Okay.
Well, I think a lot of people saw what happened with
Dombrowski.
And also, I just drew a blank. The recent guard they moved out to tackle.
Andrews Pete.
Okay, and they
because Andrus started at tackle.
They moved in the guard
inside,
and then back out.
And I'll be honest with you, I thought Andrus played pretty well.
I thought he did too. I think he made himself a lot of money.
Oh, he didn't win the Powerball, but he won the lottery.
Yeah,
and how he played at tackle.
I thought he was pretty much done.
Yeah, I thought so also. But you got to get that outside guy because you don't know enough. You don't know enough about it at this particular stage. And Saul DeVere, who I really liked. I watched him a lot at Old Dominion. He goes to the Senior Bowl, plays well. He even practiced a lot at center. Now, he's going to play guard with the Saints, but he was hurt. So now you got 2 project players.
Right.
2 young players that you're trying to work with now. So you would like to get a guy. If I'm going to pick one, it's going to be in round 1 because I can see the drop-off afterwards. And also an edge rusher.
Okay.
You're going to need that. But first and foremost, I don't have the future young quarterback on this football team.
Are you looking for him this year?
You better believe it. I'll look for one every year.
Okay.
And I tell you that I would draft a quarterback every year in the draft. It has not been the philosophy of this team and organization to do. But I would pick one virtually every year. Okay, people say, well, they miss on quarterbacks. Okay, don't you miss on tackles? Don't you miss on receivers, running backs? You miss the same way. If a guy that you think can play is there, you pick him. And I think that was maybe the big miss. Once they didn't land Mahomes, it almost seemed as though that was a back burner issue for them.
They were going to ride Breeze till
they were going to ride Breeze until the tires came off the car.
Yep, no doubt.
And also safety, because I think that's an area today.
Do you like Jordan Howden?
I like him, but my thing about it is, do you think you're going to see Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu as your starting safeties?
No, I think Marcus May's gone.
Yeah. And so
and Matthews again.
And Matthews at the end of the trail.
Right.
Okay, he's playing in the winter years of his NFL career.
Right.
So I need help at the safety position. And I realize in today's world, I just can't get that run thumper.
Right.
I got to get a guy that can match up in coverage. Because if you can't cover, I'm throwing the ball at you every down.
Yeah. I do want to get into this after we come back from our break, but let me ask you this one question before we go to break. I want to go back to the Saints. What were your thoughts on NFC Championship, AFC Championship? Campbell's getting a lot of criticism for going forward on 4th down, being aggressive. What are your thoughts?
I saw him do it all year long. I wasn't surprised.
I wasn't either.
Is it the smart thing? No. Because I think every game's a little different.
Sure.
And now this is the NFC Championship game. I would have took those points. I would have kicked the field goal. I would have kicked the field goal. And I don't know why you throw it on 1st and 2nd down, then you run it on 3rd down and you burn up a timeout with it. But I saw Dan do it all year long in watching the Lions. So it was no shock to me that he did it here. Was it the smart thing? Probably not to do, but that's the way he's going to coach until the day they pink slip him out of there. And one day, You know, Bum always had that line about there's coaches that been fired and coaches that's going to be fired.
Right.
And it's going to happen to everybody.
I would agree. Were you surprised Kansas City handled Baltimore the way they did?
Not me. That defense really has played well. Bobby and I had big differences on that. He thought Baltimore and Lamar, this was the year. A lot of people thought this was Baltimore's year. But, man, I love Kansas City's defense, and they played great all season long, and they have bailed out Mahomes and the offense many a time. The last couple games for Kansas City, almost like it's a different team offensively, and they've been able to make it work. With Rashid Rice, with Kelsey, who I thought he had the dropsies for most of the year, and then he hasn't dropped anything, so to speak.
Well, and Taylor's watching.
Yeah. And then their running game's not great, but the 49ers haven't stopped the Packers or the Lions when they wanted to run the ball. So I hit them with a bunch of Isaiah Pacheco. And I like Kansas City. I picked them in July. I thought they would be a repeat champ.
So you like them over Frisco?
Yeah. We haven't seen that since 04-05 with the Patriots. But I think in a close game, Kansas City wins. I think 49ers have the more talented team. But sometimes that doesn't tell you the whole story.
True.
And if you bet against Mahomes, you ain't won a lot of money in your life come playoff time. That's all I can tell you.
That's for sure. Mike Detillier is with us, WWL Radio. We will take a break. We come back. We'll talk Saints, LSU, Tulane, and Pelicans. All that coming up here on the program. I'm Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned here from Miranda Riders.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Mike Detillier of WBL Radio is our guest. We'll talk Saints. It's a big question. Offensive coordinator position, 10 candidates and counting. Is this due diligence on their part, looking for a particular candidate, or is there a lack of interest because maybe, again, the head coach is a little bit on the hot seat?
Well, I think what you brought up last is a factor.
I would agree.
We even talked to Drew Brees about it last night when we had him on. Drew said the same thing. It's got to be. You think about, and every coach is sort of playing for his football life every year.
Absolutely.
But with Dennis, you understand that's a little different situation. And so I think for some candidates who maybe have options either to stay where they're at or go somewhere else.
Like Johnson in Texas?
Yeah, well, like with Gerard, that's all I read about. My thing is, why would Gerard Johnson come here? Okay, it's a one-year deal, or stay with C.J. Stroud.
Right.
I thought if he left, it might be Cleveland because they needed somebody to kind of fix Deshaun Watson. So I thought if he left, that might be the place. But, Eric, I think you're fighting it here. And it reminds me a little bit of the final year of Coach O. If you remember, they were looking for coordinators.
Right.
Okay, and he goes get Durante Jones. But Durante on the list was probably 4th or 5th, or even maybe farther.
Right.
And Pete's was the offensive coordinator. Okay, he was way down the list too. But a lot of those teams, man, I love LSU, and they're going to pay me a lot of money. How long will I last at LSU?
Right.
Is the administration going to stand behind Coach O? And I don't know. I'm not going there. I'm not going to take that chance.
I'm not picking up my family, moving them around. Year.
So I think a coach with options has to have that in the back of his mind.
I agree with you.
How you can say it doesn't matter, or I know this guy hasn't been offered the job. How do you know that? Were you in that room? Okay. So if you do a Zoom call interview and you bring him in, don't you think that there was some talk of maybe an offer somewhere of this is what we're looking at?
Sure.
You're not there for the scenery. Okay.
At some point, you got to talk brass tacks.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can say, well, we're waiting to see what happens with Kubiak and with Greasy. Okay, that's great and fine. The other part of it, a lot of people aren't talking about, and I brought this up yesterday, all these defensive coaches getting hired as head coaches. You know what that tells me? That defensive coach wants to hire his assistant head coach to run his offense. And all these openings all over. A first-year head coach, you're going to get a little bit of slack, unless you're coaching in Carolina with David Tepper. And that's a story for another day. But I do think, Eric, that those two factors are getting involved here with it. And also the third factor. There is no doubt this team has an interest to bring John Gruden in some capacity. He might not have the name offensive coordinator. He may be offensive consultant or whatever it is. But that specter, come on, the word travels here. And what Jeff Duncan wrote about them talking to John and the possibility, come on, everybody has seen that. If I'm a coach, I see that. So if I'm going to be offensive coordinator and John Gruden walks in that door, guess who's taking over?
That's right. You don't need him looking over your shoulder.
And you think about Dennis Allen. What happens if you get off to a slow start?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why the Saints are looking at that.
I think you're absolutely right.
Because the fan base will be, okay, we got to,
Now, again, Gruden's got to fight off some of the issues away from the game. No and that's got to be settled court-wise. And also
in the court of public opinion.
Is the other part of it. But I will steal Hebert's line on this. Man, if you win, they could care less what you say.
See it all the time.
And like you said, do you want people looking into your emails and texts over the last 15, 20 years of what you might have said? Or stuff you sent to somebody? Now, some people say, well, it don't matter. For me, emails, I wouldn't have an issue with that at all. That's not the deal, because we communicate more in text today than anything else. But still, that particular part of it goes to show a little bit of Gruden's arrogance with this, that I can write and say what I want and don't think that something off of an NFL email is not going to get looked at somewhere down the line. That's going to tip off something, but that's just John being John. But so I think those three factors. The fact that there are other options, and with Dennis Allen, you understand that it could be one and done. Secondly, all the other openings at the offensive coordinator position around the NFL and defensive coordinators becoming the head coach. Come on, you don't know both sides of the ball. You know one side. I'm going to hire me a guy that's going to run my offense. Just like, okay, Dan Campbell, he's been more of an offensive coach, but he lets Ben Johnson run his offense and Aaron Glenn run the defense. So you got to understand that part, and the Gruden factor has to come into play. I would agree. No matter what title he's given, if he's involved with this team, he casts a real large shadow.
Yeah, I would agree. Surprised that Harley nor Ireland will offer GM positions, but yet Cody Rager goes to the Broncos to work with Sean Payton.
I think, that's cyclical. It didn't surprise me about Jeff. Jeff's been a vet in his business. The trend today is to hire a younger guy. And Kai's expertise really more is on the financial side of things. So you see it sort of split, almost like what the Saints do. It's sort of split. GM position. You have a guy financially, and you have a guy that really controls the personnel part. But, with Kai, I think it would take a great offer to get him to leave. Because I think he knows, he's in a pretty good spot here.
He's in a good spot if the guy ahead of him ever decides to retire.
Yeah, because all this stuff about firing him. Well, he's part of the will.
Loomis is not going anywhere until he's ready to go somewhere.
Right, exactly. And he made the comment, when you get a certain age, and we all have done it.
Right.
You've done it, I've done it. You get a certain age, you don't know when you're going to wake up one morning and say, I don't want to do this anymore. It was apparent that Mickey put all that to rest, that he's not retiring this year, that he's going to continue to be the executive vice president.
Can
GM.
he be a different guy now? Can he? Look,
Eric, that's the catch.
Come on. All of a sudden, you've been a guy in the background. Can you be that? He says he wants to energize the organization. First of all, he's not the kind of guy that you would think would be or energizing anything. But can he change? Can he be a more aggressive general manager? Be more out front when he's never been that?
I don't think he's going to be that. He might have been that at the press conference saying that. But come on, Mickey has always had a certain style of how to run things. That's not going to change. Dennis is not going to change.
And
he
players
is who
see
he is.
through that.
They see exactly through that. So, what gets you better as a GM and as a head coach? Better players.
Right. Well, I mean, that comes back to, again, look, your
talent evaluation.
Draft, free agency. And then, of course, the management of the cap, which has really hurt this team. Again, when you get to your when you've got guys that you've drafted, they get to their fourth year, and you can't afford those guys because you've been, again, renegotiating deals to be able to try to keep, say, under the cap, and those guys go elsewhere, and they bring your culture. They take what they've learned from you, and they've become when you get the fourth, fifth year, these guys are ready to emerge. They get that second contract, they're elsewhere. That hurts your team.
It hurts your team, but what's really hurts your team is you had a signature draft in 2017.
Right.
Okay. When you get Marshawn Lattimore, Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, Trey Hendrickson, Alvin Kamara.
Right.
You were like, whoa, we might not see another one like that for another 6-7 years.
Right.
You might have a draft where you hit on a couple guys, but nothing like that.
No.
And the impact every one of them had on this football
They lived
team.
off that draft for a long time.
And you're right. But I think what jumps out is Brian Bresee, I think, shows some talent, especially as a pass rusher, and a guy that can collapse the inside of the pocket. Now, he needs work in run defense, but that's just the way he's built.
Right.
He's going to have to technically learn how to play a little bit lower because if you stand up, they get under your pads and they move you around.
Sure.
As a pass rusher, it's a different story. But it's just been so miss. And you can say, well, injuries. Okay. You go back to Peyton Turner, he missed time at Houston. Okay, you talk to the coaches there, he always sort of had a nick and a scrape there at Houston. So it's what you're looking for. Talent has to also meet production, but the best part about production is availability.
Right.
And so they have not been able to mesh that, and when you start missing on all those early round picks, and don't give me this stuff about, oh yeah, but they supplement that with all free agents. Okay, you can look on every team. They have a JT Gray, a Rashid Shaheed, a Carl Granderson, those type players on there, because you know why? The draft's only 7 rounds. We grew up in an era where it was 17 then 12.
Right.
So those players, you're going to hit on some of them, but you could go to the 31 other teams and say it. The other thing, too, is trying to compare records. Okay, you cannot compare a win-loss record for a coach today to a Tom Landry, a Chuck Noll, a Bill Walsh in the pre-free agency world. Tom Landry took over an expansion team. In 1960. Yeah, it's going to take him 4 or 5 years. You know why? You had 2 ways to build. Draft, trades.
That's it.
That's it. No free agency. No. Chuck Noll, I'm not sure Landry didn't start with a better team than when Chuck took over the Steelers in 69. I mean, that was really as rock bottom as you could get.
Great drafts.
And then when Walsh took over, you look, those early picks all got dealt off because the owner wanted O.J. Simpson back on the Bay Area, and they gave up a ton to Buffalo to get him. And O.J. was just a shell of himself at that time as a player. So you fighting from behind in that spot. But that's pre-free agency. Today, look, if I'd asked you 4 years ago, what's the worst teams in the NFL? Detroit would have come up in the conversation, haven't you? But look what they did in a very short period of time.
Well, they took advantage of drafting so high. Right?
And they hit.
Right.
They hit.
Right. San Francisco did the same thing when they were down, right?
And Dallas did the same thing.
Same thing.
And so my thing about it is, you can cut this a lot of different ways. But if you don't hit on players via the draft,
right,
it's cheap labor for the NFL. You're not paying them nothing for 3 or 4 years.
And if you're in a situation like the Saints, where you're cap heavy, you
need to do that.
You got to do that. Let me ask this question before we move on. Kamara, Lattimore, Thomas. You expect those 3 guys on the team next year?
Oh, no way Thomas is back on the team. But I told you this last year. I was shocked that he came back.
Yeah, I was too.
That he would come back. I think Kamara stays on the team. Reasoning why, I don't know in today's world what type of value you're going to get for a running back. Everybody said, well, look what San Francisco paid for McCaffrey. But that's a little different story. I think Kamara's on this team because I don't think I can get full value for him. Lattimore, the value there would be what somebody's willing to give up to get him, because I still think
well, you
healthy.
Couldn't get it till you couldn't get anything for that till 2025 because of the cap situation,
of the cap
right?
and the
so
June
any
1st.
Draft picks you get is not this year, it's next year.
So my thing is, you can't look into the microscope.
Right.
You got to look in it through the telescope. And if they're going to have more than a couple teams that would love to get Marshawn Lattimore.
Sure.
He is an elite corner when he's healthy.
Are they better without him?
Oh, hell no, not on the field.
No, that's what
You're not. But value sometimes and money makes your choice the other way.
Right.
Of what you can get back and what you're paying him, because eventually you're going to have to make a decision here. Do you pay Paulson Adebo?
Oh, no, there's no doubt.
And then what do you do, with, I know he played at the inside corner, but I really think he's better out on the edge.
100%.
So in that particular part, you in year 2 with him, and then year 3 now, and then you're going to have to make that decision.
And year 4. And then,
you got to make that choice. Right. And you have a little bit of depth there, but you are a better football team with Lattimore. Now, again, what I can't tell you is what somebody would give up in return. And that's always the big case when you make a trade. What do you get in return for him?
Right.
And what does it do for you financially? And how much money does that clear for you for the future? Because in my opinion, there's never been a cornerback that's wore the black and gold that's as good as Lattimore.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's talk some Pelicans. 27-21. Again, 8-7 in the month of January, which I said was going to be a defining month for them. They have again found themselves in a situation where they can't close games. They're not clutch. Especially the last 5 minutes of the games, they've been inconsistent. Some believe they have to go get a point guard. That the point forward with both Zion and BI is not working. The trading deadline is next Thursday. They have Valanciunas and Najee Marshall on expiring contracts. Some believe they have to make a move here. What are your thoughts on the state of the Pelicans?
Okay, I've seen the guys that look as though they're out there. Does any of those guys really appeal to you?
You said on the trade market?
On the trade market. Really nothing there. Now, my thing about it is, if I can get my team better, I would always look at that.
Always.
But what this team does not have is an alpha dog.
Agreed.
So late in games to take over. You got talent, Brandon Ingram, Zion, C.J. McCollum. You have talent. My thing is, somebody's got to take over late. Somebody's got to be the alpha dog and take over. And
who is that? Because who's going to defer?
I have not seen it on this team.
Just the personality of the superstar, of the stars in this team are again, they're not vocal. They're not alphas. They're not. So, I mean,
and either you are or you're not.
Right.
You're not going to be one.
You can't manufacture that.
No, you can't be one.
Okay.
So my thing with it is, not only are you deficient offensively, how defensively you've broke down in those same games. It's not just all about offense.
No, it's true.
It's also the defense is sort of broken down across the board.
And how do you play against the elite teams in the league? And again, that's how you have to match up. At the end of the day, again, you have to win a series when you get into the playoffs, okay? It's not going to be one and done. You try. How do you match up again against these teams? And the question is, again, if David Griffin is standing there and he's looking at his rosters, he's saying, man, I got to let this thing roll because, again, we're finally healthy. Let's see what we're going to do.
I think he lets it roll.
Or is he going to try to be able to tinker with this and maybe again being in a strong piece?
Again, I don't see the strong piece that you can bring in. Now, maybe there's something out there that we haven't heard about that could help.
Right.
And everybody's.
But would you give up a double guy in Valanciunas? A guy that never misses games.
Hey, here's my thing. Availability, he's always there.
Right.
He's never going to be a great defensive player.
No, he's not.
But he's going to be a really good offensive player for you.
Right. And again, he is a throwback. Okay. When you got to get physical with the center position. Najee Marshall, look, he's a nice player. You love his energy. At the end of the day,
same thing with Larry Nance.
Right.
A similar situation where you love his energy and he brings some defensive.
They do. And he brings leadership.
Stalwart and leadership. But late in games, when you need somebody to take that shot, and, man, just give it to me. I got it. If I miss it, I miss it.
That should have been Zion.
It should have
been Brandon Ingram.
I agree. I agree with that.
Even C.J. McCollum to a point. Okay.
They're almost looking at one another like, okay, you going to do it?
Right.
Or
it's my turn
to do it?
That was what it was last year, right? My turn, your turn. Right?
Exactly.
I do think that there has to be a hard look at, especially late in games, having forwards handling the basketball. And I know that, again, both guys have the skill set, but again, teams clamp down. What's going to happen when you get into a series in the playoffs, and last 5 minutes of the game, you can't be turning the ball over. There's something to be said for having a true point guard. We'll see again how that plays out with the Pelicans. But look, they're 8 and 7th in the month of January. This was a big one. Now you got the Mardi Gras road trip coming up for them. They're at San Antonio this week. They come back for a quick game, and then they're gone for like 5 games on that road trip.
The thing about it too is the inconsistency of this team that can score a record amount of points in one game and then get into the 80s. It's like, well, and the other part, it's almost like a repeat of a show you've seen before. We saw the same thing last year.
Right. Again, and here's the other part. When you look at Houston, who they beat last night, and in Oklahoma City and how they've risen, 2 teams that are young, have young stars. If you're David Griffin and you're waiting for your young stars to emerge here and you're seeing teams like that pass you up, are you willing now to be able to stay pat? That's going to be the question going forward.
My thing is, I don't have the inside stuff that Griffin does.
Right.
But from what's been reported, there ain't a lot out there at this stage, unless you're willing to give up major artillery to get somebody.
And the question is, are you willing to give up a Trey Murphy? Okay,
no, I ain't giving up no Trey Murphy.
You're going to give up a Trey. Are you willing to give up a Jordan Hawkins and his upside, or maybe a Dyson Daniels? Okay,
the Dyson Daniels part would intrigue me on what I could get in return.
Right.
But Trey Murphy, no. I'm not giving up.
And then
Trey.
the other part of it is, if and when Mrs. Benson is going to be a taxpayer. Look, it's easy to keep getting that money every year, right? Okay, from again the other teams go over the tax threshold. They just got under it by again trading Kyra Lewis. They're not going to be a taxpayer this year. They say they're going to be. At what point do you strike and say, okay, we're going to make all our chips are in the middle of the table now. We're going for it.
Well, maybe part of that is she saw that done for the Saints. Okay, wasn't it all chips in?
Oh yeah.
We're going to throw it all in, and then we'll pay down the road.
Right.
You did it with the credit card.
Right.
And I think David's taken a little bit different approach since he's come in here, because the credit card stuff. It will work short term, but long term, it catches you. And for the Saints in 2025, look at that mess.
Oh, look, they've had $300 million in contracts on the books this year, okay? More than any other team. No, it has come back to bite them, but at some point, you got to get bad in the NFL, right, to get good, if you're going to be in that situation.
There's no question about it. And you don't want to use Joe Clark, who lived next to me for so many years, he passed away, but he had coached in the NFL for over 50 years. He was like, you know what's the most dreaded word in sports?
Rebuild.
Rebuild. The R word. And nobody wants to hear it. But he says, you know, there comes a point where you got to say, okay, let's start to retool, rebuild this roster.
Right.
It's not just a bit and a piece here, and you want to keep the whole gang, the band together. Right. Again, sometimes you have to get new. And listen, as old as I am, in my 60s, I'm a big believer that sometimes change is good for you, and you have to roll with the times. You can't think of what happened in 07 and 09 and 2011 will happen in 2023 the same way. Right. It's a different world, and you have to adapt to it. And that's why, for me, structure for a football team is the very key. The structure of it, and having all that work together. And you're always going to have rent players. You're always going to have buy players. Sure. But once you start putting the buy players on the books for a long time, it affects the rent players and everything else.
There's no doubt. There's a domino effect. And I'm going to tell you right now, I believe that if you would question Saints fans, that they would rather than tread water at 7, 8, 9 wins every year, they'd rather really get really bad to be really good.
Eric, I think you and I grew up in a different era of Saints football where we saw the bottom. Okay, look at the NFL today. There are probably 3 or 4 really bad teams. There are probably 18 teams that are stuck in football purgatory.
Like the guys that's playing that dome right there.
They stuck in football purgatory. And so,
what's the number one reason why? Quarterback? Quarterback, right?
Okay. And we said this so many times because, man, we heard it on Sports Talk. Got to get rid of Drew Brees. Man, we got to bring in a quarterback that can run. Okay, that's all great. Can he play? Okay, the same people that, get rid of Drew Brees now. Well, Derek Carr can't play. This guy can't play. You know, they wanted all that. But then all of a sudden when you got it, anybody can do it. We saw anybody. He wasn't very good. And so all the part about the NFL is those 3 or 4 bad teams, those 18, 19 teams stuck in purgatory, and there are probably 9 or 10 really good teams that if things break their way, they could win the Super Bowl. The Saints are not into 9 or 10 teams.
They're not.
They're not. Reality tells you they're not. They are stuck in football purgatory where you won't be real bad and you won't be real good.
But, again, eventually the cap will catch up with you. Again, combining draft picks to go up and get one player, and that.
See, I never liked that unless it was.
I don't.
Every once in a while you can do it. I'm a big believer in you accumulate draft picks and draft capital. You can say, well, when we trade back, you get a lesser player. That's great for the average fan. That's great for somebody in the media who maybe doesn't do their homework on it. But there's not 32 first-round picks every year. There's not. There's 20 to 22 legit first-round picks. And from 23 to 45, 46, the grades are similar. The one thing I do agree with Mickey on is about the oldest team in the NFL. Look the gap between the oldest team and the youngest team. That part is sometimes gets sort of.
But their stars are older.
That's what I was going to get to.
That's the issue.
The issue is who's old. And you look at Cam. You look at DeMario. Tyrann Mathieu. And
first, second, third levels of defense.
And then now you got a situation with Ryan Ramczyk you're not sure about.
And Kamara's aging.
As a running back.
Running back, he is.
And Michael Thomas is not going to be on this team. And again, it shocked me they brought him back for another year. And I did think he played solid football.
Wasn't it? I mean, again, that was about.
That was a little bit of money kind of shifting around
Kicking it down the road a little bit.
But his outburst tells you that he's already, I've checked this out.
He's trying to get out of here, man.
And he almost like gave the bouquet to the Chiefs. Hey, come get me. You know, I've made my money. Now, if you weren't paid, you'd have never said that. But Michael Thomas has probably got $60 million that he's made throughout his career. Okay, my thing about it is, what is Kadarius Toney doing with the Chiefs? Mouthing off about the Chiefs. You ain't done
nothing.
And you ain't got paid. Okay, if you got paid, they'll cut you a little slack, and there'll always be a team or two. Man, I think Michael Thomas can really help us. There'll always be that.
Well, they might. That team in orange might take him on as well. I do want to get to LSU and Tulane quickly with only 4 minutes left in the show. What are your thoughts on the way Kelly's built his defensive staff?
I liked it, and Bo Davis to me is one of the elite defensive line coaches in college football. And Blake's, I think, a really young star
in the making,
defensive coordinator that one day will be a head coach. Those two are the key pieces here, because if you look at this LSU team, defensive line today, you don't have enough talent or talent depth to play an SEC schedule.
But these guys can recruit.
Those guys can recruit, and I give Corey that. Corey Raymond, Corey can still recruit very well. Now, he's got to develop those players quicker today.
Agreed.
It's not 2010 or 2012 where I'll redshirt them and then I'll get them a year. Today, you got to get these guys playing now.
If you don't, they're going to end up
going somewhere else. So that's where the philosophy changes. For LSU, the defensive question mark is going to be defensive line. You don't have enough talent on talent depth. And offensively, you're going to have to change what you do a little bit. Because who's going to make up that 1,100 yards rushing Jaden Daniels got?
There you go.
You're going to have to run the football more effectively. And I think the next young star on that team is Caleb Jackson, running back.
Me too. Summerall, what he's been able to do, 5 stars. Okay, kind of the transfer portal, his coaching staff. Talk about it.
Man, he's
got about a minute and a half.
He's hit gold with that.
It's been unbelievable.
Especially on the offensive side of football, because he's a defensive-oriented coach. To come up with 2 5-star receivers, and you come up with a quarterback when he came out, had the 5-star too. Now, here's the thing. Why Oregon went out and get the Oklahoma quarterback if they felt he was the guy?
Well, maybe
it wasn't the right fit.
And maybe, again, the American is a better fit for him, right?
I would think it is.
Right.
I would think it is. So I'm shocked that he was able to get that type talent.
Me too.
In the catch part of the game. My thing is, the question mark's going to be what happens at quarterback, because I think his defenses will always be good. This might be a real short run for John Summerall here at Tulane.
But I think if you're a Tulane fan, you're expecting that, right?
You're expecting it, and it's what you've seen in the past. He's not going to stay here like Willie Fritz. But my thing about this is, if you've left the college or team better than how you took it, you did your job.
You did.
Thank you. All these Tulane fans that are so upset with Willie, for what? He brought you prominence that you never had before. Why are you so upset with him? Because he left? Okay, I would ask you, okay, how many times you left a job for a better job?
Well, just that stadium wasn't full, and it should have been. And then Tulane
the facilities
didn't do that. Exactly. They did not keep their promise.
Eric, we old enough to remember we heard that facility talk in the 70s. Why do I think today is going to be any different? I hear everybody talk about, well, this is going to be done, that's going to be done. Until I see it,
that's right.
I don't believe it.
And that's how Willie Fritz told us everything we needed to know in his press conference when he took a little shot at Tulane, saying, well, yeah, I had a lot of promises that didn't come through. Okay.
And every Tulane coach, from Jim Pittman to him, said the exact same thing.
Anybody that had the opportunity to moved on, because it was, again, an opportunity.
And Willie stayed longer than
he did.
most.
And I think he would have retired here if he'd got the facilities, but he didn't get them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also to his pick of AD.
Yeah, of course. That which, again, was another blunder on their part. But they've landed gold with Summerall.
Oh, man. You've hit a grand slam home run, and he will win, and he will keep you at that 9-10 win mark.
I agree.
Now, anything past that is really big time lanyard. But he's going to put you in that category.
But he's going to have a chance at getting into this new expanded playoff with the American. He's going to have a chance.
Does he have the guy that can turn the engine over on the car at quarterback? That's because, listen, Michael Pratt was another big piece.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was, no doubt. Mike, thanks for, as always.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Have a great ride as well.
We'll do it.
There you go.
Always do. Always do.
There you go. That's Mike Detillier, WWL Radio. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. So many ways to catch our program. Now there's a QR code on your screen. They'll take you to my website, ericasher.com, or the WLAE-TV YouTube channel, where you catch the program always. All right, you can also catch me on the radio. It's 4 to 6 weekdays, 106.1 FM. iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app, our digital platforms, ericasher.com. Also, you can listen live. Anchor, Spotify is where you can find our podcast. And then, of course, this program is always on our social media platforms, as well as the WLAE-TV YouTube channel, and also my website, ericasher.com. Special thanks to our underwriters who make the show possible. Each and every one of those underwriters, please support our underwriters. And then, of course, special thanks to, again, our staff here at WLAE-TV who do a great job producing our program. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson. Also, we've got Danielle Wick, Alex Chacon, Logan Graffia, and of course our great director, William Hill. For Mike Detillier, I'm Eric Asher. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your first weekend of Mardi Gras. We'll see you next week. Right back here for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.